Welcome back. We're talking with Sheena Thomson today about handling communications during a crisis or disaster. Sheena, great first and second segments there. Lots of good information. Now, I said in the first segment that we'd be talking about messaging. So here we are in our last segment. Can you tell us exactly what messaging is?
So messaging falls into several camps. The first and most important one when it comes to sort of crisis and incident management are the facts. You have to make sure the facts are all validated and correct. The second one is how you put them together in terms of what type of message is it going to be? Is it going to be a tweet or a social media post? Or is it going to be a statement? How are you going to, what method are you going to use to put that message out? And then the third one is the purpose of the message. What is the purpose of the message? Is it just to feed the media frenzy, if you like, or have you got to get a public information or public safety message out there? So what is the purpose of the message? And then the fourth one is the tone, and that's where the stakeholders come in. You have to make sure it has the right tone, because the tone of a message perhaps going to regulators will be different to the tone of the message going out to the public if you're asking them to do something or it's a call to action.
That could be a lot of different messages.
It can be a lot of different messages. Yes, but so that's where the stakeholder mapping comes in. You have to sort of segment which ones which are most important and pressing. And then the other thing you have to do, you don't have to overcomplicate it, but you just have to review it. And it might be, one person talking to another person, or it might be, several people in several countries putting out the same message, but there might be just one or two different cultural sensitivities you need to factor in there, which is why you need the plan.
Mm-hmm. In the first segment, I didn't want to mention it or even hint at it because I knew I'd be asking now. You talked about or just referenced like templates or prefabricated messages. How does that come in?
So the templates are what they say in the tin. They will basically buy you a little bit of time in those early stages of the incident. They're just there to help you get through that first 15 minutes or hour or, however long it is. And they are literally, I can confirm X incident has happened at Y location today, and then insert date. We are currently investigating, and it's just something really top level. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is it buys you time before you can get that second piece of communication out when more information is known. So, you can't do, and the most important thing is it's been approved, it's been pre-approved by legal or whatever. But what you have to put in are the facts. And that's why I said my last response was you have to make sure the facts are validated. And once they're validated, then you can get that out.
I'm curious because you've mentioned legal a few times, and I've talked to crisis management people or business continuity people, resilience, whoever. And really, sometimes it seems to be a split that some are like, yes, review things with legal. Others will listen to legal, but keep them, at bay as long as you can. What are your thoughts on that?
So either's fine. But what I will say is if you if you do ignore legal counsel, then you might obviously be opening yourself up to litigation, but then the litigation course might be a less perilous path than risking your reputation. So it's just that's where the two have to be balanced out. What's more important, protecting the legal position of the company, or protecting the reputation, or protecting public safety? It's a balance, and that's why communications, it's vital that you offer that counsel. And obviously it might be that they'll go down the legal route, but then their shares will tank because the reputation suffered, or it might be that they've ignored the advice and the regulators have come after them and they've got a massive fine afterwards or something like that. So the reason you get different answers is that people have different priorities. the reason I say get it legally approved simply because it just gives you time. And then after the incident, they said, well, it was approved by legal. We just put in the date, so it's fine. It just buys you time in those early stages.
And I guess, depending on the situation too, if if you're focusing all on legal and ignoring public safety when you should be focusing on public
Absolutely.
safety, you're going to be impacting your brand anyway. So
Exactly. And I
because you're
think the
focusing wrong.
The Boeing 737 Max is a perfect example of that.
Hmm. So I've got a question now about social media, because you mentioned posting items to social media. These days, with social media, people can say whatever they want,
Sure.
regardless of whether it gets taken down or blocked at some point. People really can say whatever they want. How do you know you're winning or losing the war on social media?
Very good question. So the first thing with social media is, as you rightly say, anybody can post. So it's very, very important very early on that you have social media listening set up, and they can set up, to look for keywords or that reflect the tone. So if you see if you're in the middle or approaching an incident, or managing an incident, you can very quickly see that you're getting criticized for not responding quick enough. So that's my first tip, is you have to get that social media listening in place very quickly. The second one is you have to be able to respond to it very quickly. And they can also, social media listening can also flag up the themes that need addressing. So it might be that they're particularly nervous about a particular product, or if it's an incident, a particular area of the city that they need access to that they can't. And you can flag that, and then that can then be fed into your messaging. So it's it's also a very powerful tool for you to help manage the crisis too. So it's a positive as well as a negative. But what's critical is you have that social media listening. It's not just monitoring, it's listening. It's looking for the tone as well. It's not just reading it, it's seeing the context and what is being said.
We see some people falling into this trap, responding to everything that's out there and getting into all these flame wars. On an organizational level, should you do that or just stay on message?
Good question. So the most important thing in an incident is to get the right information out there, not respond to everything else that's happening or being said. So that's got to be your overriding priority, making sure that valid information that's been authenticated and signed off by your internal sources, that you can send it out. If you keep saying the same message over and over and over, people will then listen. But similarly, if they're coming up with really nervous, if these themes are coming up, that's when it feeds into your messaging. So listen to them, acknowledge you've heard them, but make sure that it's reverted to, as you say, a higher message that it's constantly evolving, which it will be if it's a crisis that's very dynamic in nature.
Yeah, because we with social media, I know, and it's happened because we've seen it in the news over the last few years, that somebody on the other side of the world is saying something about what's happening in your area. And you're like, how could you possibly know what's going on? So there's all this chance for rumor and conjecture going on. But as you say, stay on message and keep repeating that message. And hopefully, I guess those people and rumors will just kind of fall to the wayside. No one will give them attention.
Yeah, it's repeating and evolving the message, because obviously if it is clearly evolving and they can see it's evolving, but you're saying the same message, it's going to run into thin ground or thin ice very quickly. So just make sure as their sentiment is and messaging, or the responses on social media is evolving, so is your messaging, and then you should be good.
I'm assuming that it would be important to make sure that whatever you're releasing on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, or whatever the case may be, is the same message that the PR person is saying in front of journalists, right? It just maybe, I don't know. Is it the exact same thing, no matter what, on all platforms?
What's important to understand, it's all one message. It's a methodology of getting it out that it changes, or that's the skill in what the PR people then decide to do. Is it a statement? What do we do? Do we focus on the statement and then do we reinforce that in social media, or do we put it out in social media and reinforce it in a statement? So that's the most important thing you have to just bear in mind, is that the messaging has to be completely linear. It has to be across all the organizations. It's how you get it out that will change. And that's where the PR people come in, which include digital, of course.
We've only got a couple of minutes left. Do you have any final thoughts or ideas you'd like to convey before we end today's show?
I think with crisis communications, you just have to keep it simple. You have to keep it clear. You have to keep it credible. But most importantly, you have to make sure it's a two-way process, because that input that you get from the public can really help you make sure that you get a successful conclusion, particularly when it comes to incidents that directly impact them.
Any quick tips for people who might be listening that maybe are a part of a crisis management team or a crisis communications team, to have a look, just say, hey, maybe I should take a look at this. Any quick tips?
Well, the main thing is, if you've got a plan, rehearse it regularly. And when I say regularly, I mean every 3 or 4 months minimum. In the military, we did it every month. Obviously not on a grand scale, but only then will you find out what you should be reviewing on a regular basis, whether it's your social media policy, your media policies, who is going to be your spokesperson, are there any new technical experts that we can bring in? Obviously, employees change as the workforce changes, but that's pretty much it. If you just follow that, just review, rehearse, and revise.
I've got a little bit extra time here. Who should be involved with the rehearsal? The whole crisis management team, or is it just kind of a talk through?
So different types of exercises. You can just have a ring around to make sure we've all got the numbers right, and that people are responding, and they do respond within 2 minutes or whatever you've benchmarked. Or it can be a desktop exercise, probably about every 3 months, and then a fairly major exercise, sort of half a day, at least once a year. So that's the only way you'll build up your capability and your credibility. So when the button has to be pushed, then you're ready for it and you can do it with confidence.
And you just said the confidence, and I said the what I was going to say is the PR person too could also practice their role here to build up their confidence. So when they really are in front of, a sea of reporters or public or whoever stakeholders, they convey a confident message.
Absolutely. And even if it's just practicing on each other in the office, just do dummy press conferences or dummy press interviews. They really will, it's also part of your sort of wider professional training. It's communication skills that you're developing. It's not just crisis communication skills. So, incorporate it in part of your wider leadership training or your wider, ongoing continuous professional development. It can be quite a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, it could be. You can have some laughs doing those exercises.
If you're going to make a mistake, make it in a training exercise. Don't make it with a real press interview.
True. Yeah. Sheena, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today. I really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And everybody listening and watching, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.